Scientific farming. It's 5 o'clock on a cold, dark March morning. Frost covers the stone steps of a farmer's cottage in the south of England. Smoke has just begun to rise from the chimney. A huddle of sheep crowd against a stone wall nearby, looking hopefully toward the cottage. Occasionally one baas. William Barclay has already been up for an hour. He's emptied the chamber pots, brought in wood, and stoked the fire. His wife, Joanne, is already kneading the day's bread. It will rise near the fire until ready to bake for lunch. The 3 children are still sleeping, but Joanne is listening for the first cry from baby Matilda. William takes a rope down from the wall and lights his lantern. He's headed out to the cattle barn to slaughter one of the cows for the evening meal. He's already eaten his breakfast, standing, a piece of yesterday's oat bread soaked in a dish of ale. Far away in a comfortable London manor, Isaac Newton, now 79, is still sleeping. In an hour or so, a maid will bring him his morning tea and stoke his bedroom fire. He'll sit up in bed, the blankets wrapped around his shoulders, and drink his tea, waiting for the valet to arrive and lay out his clothes. Once dressed, he'll sit down to a breakfast of grilled fish, dried apples, and fine white bread. His carriage is waiting for him, the coachman huddled on the driver's seat, shivering in the cold morning air. When Newton finishes his breakfast, the coachman will take him to the Mitre on Wood Street, a warm and comfortable tavern where he'll preside over a meeting of the Royal Society of Scientists. After the meeting, he'll dine on sizzling roast beef, cold sage soup, wine, and apple tart, and then he will nap in a leather chair in front of the tavern's roaring fire. The life of a wealthy philosopher and scientist seems very different from the life of a hard-working farmer. But although Newton, Locke, and other thinkers who tried to discover universal laws were wealthy men, who could afford to spend their days writing and thinking, rather than working with their hands, the universal laws they laid out changed the lives of farmers like William and Joanne. As William goes through his day, he'll be farming in a different way than his grandfather and great-grandfather. He'll be using new scientific methods of farming, thanks to the universal laws of nature. The idea that laws could be discovered to explain the natural world soon began to change the practical details of everyday life. After all, if the universe was governed by universal laws, the people were governed by universal laws. Surely crops and animals were also governed by universal laws. If farmers knew those laws, they could use them to raise larger crops and healthier animals. William Barclay is getting ready to slaughter a cow so that his family can eat meat. 20 years earlier, no poor farmer would expect to eat meat in the winter or early spring. But William has plenty of meat for his family, because he knows some of the universal laws that govern plants and animals. For centuries, farmers had known that fields planted with wheat year after year would give less and less grain. The wheat plants were using up all of the minerals in the soil, and as the minerals disappeared, wheat plants grew small and spindly. So farmers would plant wheat one year, barley the next, and then let the fields lie empty the 3rd year, so that the minerals in the soil would return. But when English and Dutch farmers began to investigate the universal laws of plants, they discovered that different kinds of plants use different kinds of minerals. Lord Charles Townshend, an English gentleman farmer with a large estate, came up with a new rotation of crops. Since turnips and clover actually return minerals to the soil, he suggested planting first wheat, then turnips, then barley or oats, and finally clover. Farmers who used this 4-year rotation could plant their fields every single year. They had more grain and more food for cattle, since cows liked turnips and clover. Soon most English farmers were using Townshend's crop rotation, and Townshend had earned himself the nickname Turnip Townshend. Since farmers now had more grain and more cattle food, they could afford to keep larger herds of cattle alive all year round. Now they could eat meat any time of the year. William Barclay and his family will eat beef for dinner tonight. After William Barclay prepares his meat to be cooked, he heads over to the sheep pen to feed the flock. William's sheep are big, round ewes with plenty of thick wool. William has spent the last few years carefully breeding his best sheep together, hoping for large, healthy lambs. Now his flock is the finest in the countryside. William's grandfather couldn't breed his best sheep together. In his day, farmers didn't have private, fenced-off fields where they could raise crops and put flocks out to pasture. Open fields were owned by towns, and everyone in the town farmed the fields together. Everyone's sheep and cows grazed on common pasture land together. But with the new interest in scientific farming and crop rotation, each farmer wanted his own field to till in the most modern way possible. So the English government passed laws called Acts of Enclosure. These acts divided the common fields up into smaller private fields, each one fenced off. Enclosure meant that each farmer could rotate his crops and fertilize his fields, and could control which animals mated together. A sheep farmer could breed only his best sheep. A dairy farmer could breed only the fattest beef cattle and raise more cows ideal for meat. As a matter of fact, one farmer named Robert Bakewell crossbred the fattest cows from several different herds and created a whole new kind of cow, called the New Leicestershire. This animal put on fat quickly so that Englishmen could feast on roast beef with plenty of fat gravy all year round. The Acts of Enclosure didn't please every farmer. When a town enclosed its lands, government officials arrived to divide up the fields. The farmers receiving the fields had to pay the government officials, and they also had to pay for new hedges or stone walls to surround their land. When Williamstown was enclosed, he had enough money to pay the fees, but other poorer farmers nearby didn't have enough money. They had to sell their farms to richer neighbors. William bought one. Now his farm is twice as large. After feeding his sheep, William goes to harness his plow horse. It's time for the job that will occupy the rest of his day. Sowing his early spring crop of wheat. He hitches his horse to a square wooden machine with 2 boxes on top and 2 sharp hollow wooden blades below. This new invention has made his fields even more productive. His father sowed wheat by walking through the fields, throwing seeds all around him. Some of the seeds sprouted, but many were wasted. Birds ate some, others baked in the sun before they sprouted, and the plants that did come up didn't come up in orderly rows, so that William's father couldn't walk between the rows of his own crop to care for and weed it. But then a scientist farmer named Jethro Tull invented the seed drill. When William's horse pulls the seed drill through his field, the 2 hollow wooden blades will cut narrow, even furrows into the ground. Seeds will drop out of the boxes, called seed hoppers, and fall into the furrows. Protected from the sun and from scavenging birds, fertilized by the rich earth where turnips were planted the year before, William's wheat crop will yield bushels and bushels of grain. He'll sell some of this grain. The rest will feed William's family, his sheep, and his cows. All over England, farmers like William are using these new scientific methods of farming. Ancient ways of growing crops and tending animals are disappearing. An agricultural revolution is taking place.